Let's dive right into this explainer and unpack a promise I know we have all heard 1,000 times. Just save a little bit early on, let compound interest do the heavy lifting, and you are absolutely guaranteed to retire wealthy. It's the holy grail, right? The secret to getting rich from compound interest. But today, we're going to look at the massive gap between that myth and the reality we actually live in.
Think about it for a second. If the math of compound interest is so foolproof, why are most people still flat broke at 65 after working their entire lives? We see those rocket ship graphics and the save early infographics literally everywhere. But today, we're answering the one haunting question nobody really wants to ask out loud. What is actually happening behind the scenes here?
Part 1, the promise and the math. Let's just start right off with the textbook pitch.
You know the drill. The standard advice is brilliantly simple. You put in $1,000 at, say, a 10% return. Year 1 earns you $100. Nice. But by year 2, you're earning on $1,100. Year 3, $1,210, and it just keeps building from there.
And boom, that is the undeniable magic of exponential growth. It's basically a quantity increasing at an accelerating rate because you're earning interest on your past interest. At first, it just looks like a flat line, kind of like a tiny seed turning into a sapling. But you give it enough time, and around year 15 or 20, that line curves violently upward. Small starts, massive results.
Part 2, the catch. Because real life isn't a clean line. That textbook chart assumes one huge, glaring thing: 40 uninterrupted years of steady saving. In reality, life throws some serious curveballs. It is full of wealth-destroying interruptions. At age 22, you weren't starting at zero. You're probably starting in the negative with student debt. By 35, bam, you're hit with a mortgage and kids. At 55, maybe unexpected medical bills or a job loss pops up. And by the time you're 75, retirement is shockingly expensive, with healthcare and care home costs easily draining a lifetime of equity.
When you put them side by side, the contrast is honestly pretty stark. On one hand, you have the perfect, smooth, textbook curve of uninterrupted growth. But on the other hand, you have the jagged, really expensive reality you actually live. It dips into negative territory, bumps up slightly in middle age, and plunges near the end. So, perfectly uninterrupted compounding, it's incredibly rare.
Part 3, zooming out, looking at the limits of a finite economy. Because for everyone's compound interest to work at the exact same time, the entire economy has to grow to match it.
Okay, I want you to picture a small, resource-rich island. Early on, economic growth is incredibly easy, right? There's unclaimed land, untapped resources, plenty of room to build. But eventually, that island fills up with buildings, farms, and roads until there is absolutely no open frontier left. Every single acre is owned. This perfectly mimics a mature, developed economy today. There's a finite limit because nearly everything is already spoken for.
And look, this isn't just some fun thought experiment. A mature, developed nation like the UK only grows at around 1% a year. Why? Simply because the massive new frontiers of value have already been claimed. The capacity meter is virtually full.
Part 4, the twist. So who actually keeps compounding when the overall economy hits the brakes?
Well, here is where we see a massive divergence. While the overall economy's growth is stuck grinding along at a flat 1%, the wealth of the top 1% doesn't slow down with it. No, it keeps accelerating, compounding at closer to 5% a year. So wait a second, where on earth is that extra growth coming from if the economy isn't producing more? Well, it isn't coming from brilliant new inventions. It actually comes from the wealthy acquiring a fixed pool of finite assets. We're talking property, land, stocks, gold, art, classic cars. They are buying up the assets everyone else already owns and shifting them into highly concentrated hands.
Part 5, the middle class squeeze. Let's talk about what this actually means for you and me.
You know, your house might look like it's worth way more on paper, which feels great, right? It makes you feel richer. But you aren't actually creating new wealth. The economic pie is staying the exact same size. You are really just watching the price of that same pie rise, while the middle class slice shrinks and the top wealth slice massively expands.
The source material actually uses this really brilliant historical metaphor to capture this whole trap. It goes, Esau, starving, trades away his entire inheritance for a single bowl of soup. Multiply that across millions of families, and you get a slow transfer of ownership from the many to the few. Esau wasn't thinking about the future. He had to eat today. This perfectly illustrates how millions of families who are making short-term choices under intense, long-term financial pressure are slowly transferring their actual ownership of the economy away to those at the very top.
So here's how the trap actually plays out step by step. Wealth chases finite assets. Asset prices inflate. The middle class is gradually priced out of ownership. And ultimately, the economy loses its spending power. Fast forward 50 years, and you end up with an economy shaped like an hourglass. And a healthy middle class isn't just some nice societal perk. It's literally the engine that keeps the entire system running. Without it, the overall quality of life just lowers for everyone. So, is getting rich from compound interest just one big lie? Well, no. The math is very real. It just doesn't work for everyone at once. It was never a rising tide that lifts all boats. In a mature economy, one person's rapidly compounding wealth is, quite simply, someone else's shrinking share of the pie.
So the very next time a financial guru tells you that getting rich from compound interest is a flawless, guaranteed system for everybody, I want you to ask yourself a really uncomfortable question. On the other side of that trade, who is losing ground? Because in a finite system, exponential growth always has a cost. Thanks so much for watching this explainer, and until next time, keep asking the hard questions.